I appreciate the importance of individualized care or person-centered care. You have to approach helping people from a space of cultural humility and understanding that you don't really know everything, right? We are all learning from each other.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Your Health Matters by Sorogi. Thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate everyone that tunes in to listen to us every time we drop a new episode. We're really grateful for the support. We started out the year with a bang. Last episode, I was joined by Sydney Smith, nurse and diabetes care and education specialist, to discuss the benefits of participating in a diabetes education and support program. If you haven't listened to or watched episode 6, I highly recommend you do so right after this one. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any episode. The podcast is also available on Spotify. This episode is focused on healthy eating and diabetes. When a person is diagnosed with diabetes, nutrition is one of the many self-care behaviors that they have to learn. The dietitians play a key role in helping people figure out what to eat, what not to eat, and really guiding them through their process so they make healthy choices. So joining me today to talk about nutrition, making sense of diet as it relates to diabetes is Miss Tariro Savoy. She's a registered dietitian and newly minted certified diabetes care and education specialist. Welcome to the show, Tariro.
Hi, Dr. Viv. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the new title. So well deserved.
Thank you.
Our dear friend Cordialis, who's been on the show a few episodes ago, and she had introduced us about 4 or 5 years ago, and we have worked on a few grand projects together. I still remember you joining, or me joining one of your virtual sessions, and I was super impressed. Every participant was engaged. You are really good at what you do. The cooking demonstrations that you hosted were truly amazing. We had a lot of great reviews from attendees, and personally, you really made me want to try tofu. So I'm now wondering if every registered dietitian is a good cook, but I'm really fascinated when I talk to registered dietitians from Africa or the Caribbean, because I grew up in Cameroon. I don't think I ever heard of a registered dietitian growing up. So share with our audience your story and why you choose to focus on nutrition as a career.
Well, my story goes back to Zimbabwe, where I grew up. I was at boarding school. At that time, I was in what we call Form 3, kind of starting to plan or decide what am I going to do afterwards, and wasn't really sure yet, but I know I enjoyed sciences. So it so happened that an alumni came, well, 2 of them came to visit the school to talk about careers, and they were so passionate about nutrition. And they talked about how we are what we eat, and what we eat determines our overall well-being, be it emotional or physical. And the passion they had and just the way they spoke about how they enjoyed what they did made me realize, you know what, this is what I think I would love to do. So back home, it's actually the title of nutritionist. So they talked about nutrition, they talked about how it involves sciences, which is what I really enjoyed doing. So I decided there and then I'm going to be a nutritionist, and that started my journey.
Oh, wow. That means your passion for nutrition started pretty early on, even before you moved to the United States.
Yes.
Oh, that is really amazing. Well, you mentioned something about we are what we eat. I believe there's this Ayurvedic proverb that goes, when your diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. And when the diet is right, is of no need. So I am truly grateful for what you do. With many people of African descent being diagnosed with diabetes, representation matters. I wish we had many more people like you in the profession. So thank you for what you do. I know this is one thing that brings out a lot of confusion, anger, and sometimes frustration when people have to talk about what they eat. With diabetes, people have to learn about what they eat for the first time, how much they're eating, and actually when to eat, because all those different things have an impact on your blood sugar levels. So it can be challenging and frustrating for some to rethink their relationships with food. So let's get right into it. And if we do our job right with this podcast episode today, we're going to hopefully take away some of the fears and anxiety when it comes to nutrition and leave people with practical things that they can begin to do today to improve their health. So no pressure, right, Terry?
No pressure. Yeah. Enjoy eating. Enjoy life.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started talking about healthy eating. Share with our audience what we mean when we talk about a balanced diet.
Well, Dr. V, for me, when I hear balanced diet, what comes to mind is a way of life, a dietary pattern, something that somebody incorporates into their lifestyle, right? Because with eating, it's really a part of who we are, our culture, our beliefs, our emotions, our memories. So when talking about balanced diet, I usually typically refer to as a way of what you decide to eat, food groups that characterize the relationship between nutrition, health promotion, prevention, or actually delaying the progression of the disease. So what I typically do is avoid the word diet because sometimes people associate it with the negative connotation of, okay, I need to lose weight. That's my New Year resolution. I start restricting certain foods. I lose 5 pounds, yay! And then I'm like, okay, I can go back to the old habits and I gain it again. So it becomes a yo-yo. But with dietary patterns, it becomes a way of life, something that you consciously do every day and you enjoy doing because you appreciate the health benefits. So what that means is that you make every bite count, quoting a phrase that is currently being used in the current dietary guidelines for Americans. So by making every bite count, you actually are incorporating all the food groups in what you eat.
Correct.
So you're eating a variety of fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, whether they are plant-based protein or animal-based protein. You're eating dairy or drinking dairy or choosing alternatives to dairy that are healthy. But it also has an aspect of making sure that your foods are safe and they're not causing you to be sick. So I would say it's a way of life where you're choosing a variety of nutrient dense foods.
I like what you just said about variety. So I think a lot of people, when they're trying to make sense of what to eat and not to eat, and they get on the internet and Dr. Google, there's so much out there. There is no fat kind of diet, but I
Yeah.
like what you say about balanced diet, incorporating all the different food groups and even looking at micronutrients, because all these things together is what promotes health. So
Exactly.
what do you think about that? Because I've seen so many crazy diets on the internet, I can't keep track anymore.
Yes. When I talk to friends, family, or people I'm working with, I always say, make sure you're looking for things that are evidence based. When I talk about evidence based, there's a lot of emerging and current research that is actually done by scientists that is on the different aspects of micronutrients, macronutrients, and their effect on our health. So I always try to point people towards evidence-based research or websites that are based on evidence research. So maybe later on I can give some examples of places on the internet that somebody can trust for accurate information.
Thank you. Love that. Love that. And we are going to include that in the episode notes. So let's go in and talk about the different food groups. And let's start with carbohydrates because we know carbs now almost seems to be like another not so kind, kind word. This is a family show, so I'm trying not to use the word that is coming to mind. But let's just talk about diabetes and carbohydrates. So can you share more with our audience benefits of carbohydrates, all the different types or sources of carbohydrates?
So I always tell people carbs are friends. They're not enemies. Our bodies actually need carbohydrates because carbohydrates are our main source of fuel. They also have other functions, but they are main source of fuel. So we need carbohydrates. But what's going to affect blood sugars mostly is what type of carbohydrate you're choosing and the amount of carbohydrate you're choosing. So we have carbohydrates that we call simple carbs, carbs that you might find in things like white bread, regular sodas, fruits, for example, and they will cause your blood sugar to spike really high after you eat before it comes down. And then you have, on the other hand, what we call complex carbs, carbs that would likely be in things like brown rice, whole wheat bread, grains as well. So what happens is that when you eat something with the complex carb, you'll just have a gentle rise in the blood sugar. That's not really going to spike you high too much after you eat that carbohydrate. So the type and amount of carbohydrate is going to be very important, but it's not an enemy. We do need our carbohydrates. We just need to have a healthy relationship with the carbs that we're taking in.
Beautiful. So I like my white rice jollof rice.
Yes.
So what would that be, a simple carb or a complex carb?
It would be a simple carb because it's now been stripped of the outer layer that has most of the fiber that would make it a complex carb. So maybe when you make that jollof rice, you could substitute with brown rice.
Ah, now you have to go there. Miss Tari, what are you trying to do?
And you know what, Dr. Viv, this is something that affects our choices, right? Maybe we grew up eating white rice instead of brown rice. And then somebody comes in and says, I suggest that you try brown rice. It can be a challenge. It has happened to me. I've had to make conscious choices in things like that. So for example, when somebody's transitioning from a simple carb to a complex carb, sometimes I'll say things like, you can mix it up and try different ways of preparing it, because sometimes it's about taste and exposure. So for example, with brown rice, I'll say, okay, try mixing white rice and brown rice. And as you're mixing it, slowly reduce the amount of white rice and increase the amount of brown rice. Use flavors, different flavors and herbs to add taste to the brown rice, maybe adding things like cilantro, cooking with chicken broth or vegetable broth instead of water. And sometimes I've had people say, you know what, I'll try that. And they come back and say, it did work.
You also mentioned something about it's also about how much of it we're eating. So what if you have someone who say, Miss Tari, I'm sorry, I tried your brown rice with everything, every seasoning on planet Earth. I can't do it. I still like my white rice version of jollof rice. Would you then say that reducing the portion would make a difference?
Absolutely. So the amount of carbs definitely has an impact also on how much your blood sugar is going to rise afterwards. So there are certain things that one can do, right? Maybe add more veggies, non-starchy veggies to the jollof rice, so that as you eat, the fiber from the non-starchy vegetables will make you eat less of the white rice, or basically reducing the amount of rice that you're using. Think of it in terms of, if I have my plate, and usually if somebody like me usually puts half the plate as rice, then maybe reduce it to the size of a fist. Maybe before I was eating this amount of rice is half the plate, a smaller size, and that will help as well. And we'll talk, I guess, later on about how to do portion control in a way that will kind of help us to manage how much we're eating of the carbs, still getting enough, but making sure our blood sugar is not going too high afterwards.
I like that. What about non-starchy vegetables? I think a lot of time when I pull out the plates here, the picture of a plate that we have in doctors' offices, it has cucumber in it or some spinach. And a lot of people from Africa are going, what's that? Are you telling me you're not going to make me eat cucumber and kale every day? So let's talk about, that non-starchy, the benefits of the non-starchy vegetables first. And then let's talk about some of the examples that people can really relate to, because it doesn't have to be a spinach on your plate every day.
No, not at all. So I love non-starchy vegetables because they are packed with nutrients. They have vitamins, minerals, fiber, and phytochemicals. They also have an added benefit when you're speaking in the context of managing blood sugar, of being low in carbs and low in calories. So my motto when it comes to eating non-starchy vegetables is eat a rainbow of colors of non-starchy vegetables. And as you make your plate, half of it should be that rainbow of colors of veggies. So you could enjoy them as snacks in between, you could enjoy them with your meal. And being somebody that grew up, which is something sad to say, I never really appreciated it until I moved to the diaspora. When I was growing up, we had a garden outside our house. And mom used to grow vegetables like kale, collard greens, okra, peppers, tomatoes.
Mm.
And when it was time for a meal, it was just a matter of going into the garden, getting some different leaves of vegetables and making the meal, whatever meal we were having. So there are a variety of veggies. And I like that now with, depending on where you live, you can actually go to international stores that might have a version of the vegetables that you were accustomed to, whether it's okra, whether it's collard greens, kale. I am also exposed to wild greens that when I used to visit my grandparents in the rural areas, we used to eat called, I think in English it's bed plum, but in my native tongue it's called muni. We also used to eat pumpkin leaves,
Mhm.
with either tomato or with peanut butter sauce. So there's a variety of veggies that you can access that you grew up eating that bring back beautiful memories that are nutrient dense. And you can actually make that colorful plate. For example, when making pumpkin leaves, you can use tomato, you can use pepper, onion, different herbs that you like. And there you have it, a colorful plate of non-starchy vegetables.
I know you've heard of this one, cassava leaves.
Yes, yes,
All right. So
yeah.
we have cassava leaves. You have, for me, we have what we also call jam and jammer. These are different types of non-starchy vegetables that I know people from Cameroon they love. So great. It's good to know that, for people to know they don't have to have cucumbers or something like that on their plate every day. No, you could switch it up. You could try different varieties of non-starchy vegetable. Now, how you cook it makes a difference too, right?
Oh, yes. Because when you cook, how long you cook vegetables for, how you cook them is also going to impact your nutrition as well. Because sometimes you might have people who like very fatty meals. So they fry their vegetables, add a lot of water, add a lot of salt because they like that salty taste, or a lot of sauces. So you have to keep in mind that how you prepare your food is going to also contribute to how much added sugar or salt you're going to have with that meal. And also, for another conversation, fat can also add to insulin resistance when you're talking of blood sugar management, which will also negatively impact your blood sugars after a meal. So all those things matter. And sometimes, raw vegetables, when you can eat them, are very healthy and very good. I actually do raw vegetables as a snack. It's not something I appreciated as a kid, but growing up now, I do appreciate it. For example, one of the best snacks that I enjoy is something like this. So you see, I have my carrots and I have,
Nice.
yeah. I don't know, Dr. Viv, if you were ever exposed to homemade peanut butter growing up.
Oh yes, 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 yes. I
Yeah,
grew up. We made our own. The only time I knew peanut butter could come in a container is when I moved to the United States. I'm serious. We made our own peanut butter from scratch.
yes,
Yes.
yes. So, and one of the things that in some households people grow is actually carrots. So, carrots, right? And peanut butter. So, you have a protein right there and a healthy fat because peanut butter also has fat in it. And you dip it with these are cut slices of carrots. And this is so good. I'm sorry,
I know that. It's okay. I'm used to it. I told you, you're amazing. So by all means, you definitely love food. I know we had when we make peanut butter, we had it with garden eggs. So
Mhm.
it was really good. I miss those days. I
Yeah.
really do miss. But that's a good snack. You just talked about it, right? Some peanut butter and some carrot. That's an
Mhm.
excellent snack option.
Mhm. And unfortunately, I didn't have time to get this, but I actually came across a type of cucumber that I grew up seeing at my grandmother's rural home. So it's yellow and it's kind of spiky, and we called it cucumber, wild cucumber back home. But that is actually another healthy kind of snack because it's high in vitamins and also fluid. When we used to be out in the fields, that's all we would pick up and eat as we go because it was right there, it was healthy. So if you have access to it, if it's something you're familiar with, that's also another healthy snack because these are the kind of snacks that you can just wash, cut, and there you go. Or even tomatoes. I remember we had tomatoes in our garden. This is a universal plant, right? A lot of us are exposed to it. So cutting it in, washing it, cutting it in slices, a little bit of pepper, and there you go.
Amen, sister. Amen. I love that. You make nutrition so much fun.
It
I
is.
know this has come up in one of our classes, and not everyone has access to fresh non-starchy vegetables. Some people, either get it in a can or frozen. So if you had to advise someone who couldn't have access to fresh, would you recommend the canned vegetables or frozen as an option? What would
Yes.
it, and is there any difference why you would pick one over the other?
No, I actually would recommend both depending on a person's budget because I think we're all feeling it these days when we go to the grocery store that things are going up. So when both fresh, frozen, and canned vegetables are healthy to eat. So the thing that you have to look out for is the food label. Does it have added salt? Does it have added sugars? Those are things that you want to really look out for because when you think about it, sometimes there are canned vegetables that tend to be higher in sodium. Or sometimes when you get a frozen vegetable, there might be vegetables that have added sauces to it. So you want to make sure that you're reading the label, looking at the sodium content and also the sugar content to see is it. Now, if you're worried about added salt, one thing you can do is just rinse them, right? Drain them and rinse them under running water, and that will decrease the amount of sodium that is in there. I removed the company logo, but I do use a lot of canned vegetables in my household. I find them very cheap. I also have frozen vegetables. I found them very cheap. And also because most of us we're very busy, this can be an easy way of preparing vegetables too, because you drain it, you rinse it, and it's ready to saute or cook whichever way you're planning to cook it.
But would you say if someone has the option, you prefer fresh over canned?
It would be more of a personal preference. I prefer fresh because of how I grew up. Again, it's cultural um, preferences or habits and so forth. But if I'm choosing fresh, I don't buy out of season. I buy
Mm.
season because that will also make a difference to the cost of the vegetables. And I look for the area I'm living at to see what vegetables are in season, and then I will buy those. But when I'm craving something that is not in season, then I go for the canned or the frozen.
Makes sense. It's good for the budget too, because if it's in season, it's probably not as expensive too, right?
Right.
Awesome. Now, carb counting is something that we also try to teach people in diabetes, because how much carbs you've already shared with us can increase your blood sugar levels. But people will say, it's hard. Nobody likes to sit and measure their food and, use a cup, to check on how much, it's a little challenging. And even when you go out to eat in restaurants with families and friends, it's a little challenging. So we talk about the plate method. Can you share with our listeners how the plate method might be a good way for people to make sure they're not consuming a lot of excess carbohydrates?
Okay. Good point. So that goes back again to that plate, making half of the plate mostly the non-starchy vegetables of choice, right? A rainbow of colors of non-starchy vegetables. So half of the plate will be vegetables, a quarter of the plate will be the carbohydrate. And remembering, like you're saying, Dr. Viv, that the type of carb also matters. So you want it to be mostly the complex carb. And then a quarter of your plate will be the protein of choice. And we say lean protein choices. So foods that are not fatty. So maybe poultry without the skin, baked versus fried, for example. So I like this method because, and I even use it in my own household because it's such an easy visual way of controlling the amount of carbs you're going to eat and then still managing to have a healthy and also attractive plate, because we also eat with our eyes, right? We eat with our eyes, we eat with our nose, and the taste, everything just comes together. So when I look down and I see a plate of kale mixed with peppers, tomatoes, and then I see you see, you're already visualizing it and you get excited that, you know what, this is what I'm going to enjoy. So the plate method, very, very helpful. And the diabetes.org website actually has tons of ideas to use this plate method for different meals.
Let's talk about what we drink too. I know we want to move into proteins, but I want to just share, because sometimes we talk about the plate and people forget about the drinks as a source of carbohydrate too. I have people tell me, "Oh, I had a salad for lunch," and I'm going, "So why are your blood sugar levels in the 300s?" And after a long conversation, I'm like, "Are you sure that's everything you had?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, and I had a cup of Pepsi." I'm like, "Oh, okay." They're
Yes,
not counting there, right? It's not,
yes,
the
yes,
relationship is not there like, "Oh yeah, that has added sugar too, that counts."
right.
So, it makes a difference, right? What we also drink it.
Yes, yes. And I usually like to say, generally, whether you're managing type 2 diabetes or not, just as a general rule, you don't want to really always be drinking your carbs. You want to be eating your carbs because that will also impact how high your blood sugars go. So, for example, if I have an orange juice, or if I have an apple, a fresh apple, an apple juice, that apple, the flesh has fiber in it, right? It's got fiber in it. It's a whole mixture of other nutrients, the minerals in there. And then in apple juice, the flesh has been taken out. It's now has been squeezed to make that apple juice. So when I eat versus when I drink, this is going to be different. What's going to happen to my sugars? With the apple juice, spike higher. With my apple, maybe a gentle rise before it comes back to the physiologic range again. So definitely you want to always be trying to go more for the whole fruits versus the juices or sodas that have added sugars to them. And the other thing I was thinking about too is when it comes to sodas and juices, when let's take soda for an example, we want to make every bite count or every drink count. Now you look at the label, what's mostly in that soda? Sugars.
Sugar.
And yeah, right. But you look at an apple, we don't have nutrient facts label on fresh fruits that they stick on them, but you can actually look on the USDA website to find what nutrients are in, for example, certain fruits or vegetables, and you'll find that you're really getting being bagged for your buck compared to if you were just having a soda but eating the apple. Totally different. You're making every bound and every sip count.
Very good point there. And also the size of the cup matters, right? I know we, as educators, we say cup and people, you think everyone understand that we're talking about a measuring cup. A cup to someone could just necessarily mean, you know what I mean? Whatever thing they use at home, they're not necessarily equating that to a measuring size cup, right? So I think it's also something people have to keep in mind that when they say, you know, 1 cup of something, it's not 1 cup of your 7-Eleven, you know, extra large cup.
No, no, definitely, definitely. That's why I feel I appreciate the importance of individualized care or person-centered care. You have to approach helping people from a space of cultural humility and understanding that you don't really know everything, right? We are all learning from each other. How you grew up and how I grew up, totally different. I can't make an assumption. I'll use Africa as an example that people think, oh, you're from Africa, so you do things the same way as Dr. Viv does, or
Yeah.
you were exposed to the same food that Dr. Viv was. It's not the case. And like you said, how we perceive things is totally different. I grew up, this is a large plate, right?
Yes.
Or I will use an example. When I first came, some friends took me to Burger King, right? And where I come from, the regular size would be what is the kid size, right? So
Yes.
I asked for the regular size of the burger, the French fries, and the drink. And I see this huge. I was like, no, that's not my order. And I'm arguing, that's not mine. But you see, perception really meant to hear what I would consider, what I considered as regular size would is considered the kid size. But here, somebody who grew up here, the regular size is totally different. So I appreciate what you're saying that we really have to understand what somebody's saying when they said, I had 1 cup, I had 1 plate. Show me, teach me so that I learn and we can adjust to your situation, not a generalization.
Oh, I learned that lesson the hard way many, many years ago. I remember being in clinic, and this is when I just started out with diabetes education. I was helping this older gentleman, and I was just trying to figure out why. Everything about his meal was perfect, you know, but I was trying to understand why is he always having blood sugar levels? I think it was 350, sometimes 400 after his lunch. And it wasn't added up. I keep telling me, no, I just a small cup. Finally, I was like, could you just describe to me this cup, okay? And then he goes, you know, the 7-Eleven cup. And I'm like, there we go.
Yeah.
That's my, that's it right there. So like I said, learn the hard way. Since then, I don't make assumptions anymore. I like, you know, tell me more. Describe it to me. Do you have a picture? So all those things make a difference. So really, really good point. So let's go and talk about proteins, right? Proteins also count. So what can you share the benefits of lean? I know you mentioned lean proteins earlier when you were talking about the plate. Why is lean protein beneficial for just healthy eating and also for people living with diabetes?
Protein is an essential nutrient. It has many different functions in our body, whether it's maintaining skin health, immune function, helping us fight diseases, so many building our bodies, our muscles, and everything. But the type of protein, just like the type of carbohydrate, matters as well. So I continue saying lean protein, because the fattier choices of lean protein is going to be a ripple effect afterwards. Extra fat, extra adipose tissue, we're gaining weight, extra fat, because, for example, if we're talking about animal-based products, they tend to come with saturated fat, which is not good for our heart health. When you're also talking about fat, added fat, when it's not lean protein, also adding to insulin resistance as well. So lean protein choices are very helpful, one in weight maintenance, and also in making sure that we're not getting too high after a meal and staying high because of the added fat to the meal.
Good point. And proteins do not raise your blood sugar level the same way that carbohydrates do, right?
So the foods that are going to directly impact your blood sugar after a meal is carbohydrates. That's why we tend to focus a lot on the type and amount of carbohydrates that you eat. But also we need to appreciate that food is not just broken down into this is carbs, it's like a food matrix where everything is just twisting and connected together. So when it comes to protein, that's another discussion of what it does in terms of the secretion of insulin afterwards, but we can talk about that later. But on the most basic level, protein is not going to directly impact your blood sugar after a meal. But if you have added fat to it, then it's going to affect, certainly after you eat, you might find that you're staying high for a longer time and you wonder why. And we've seen it with people maybe after they eat pizza, maybe cheese, a very fatty, high cheese pizza, and maybe they are on a continuous glucose monitor and they're still high. And there's ways now we can actually make changes to counteract that added fat when managing in blood sugars. But that's another conversation.
That's perfectly understood. We'll have you back to talk more about it, but we're going to keep it simple today.
So other non-animal proteins would be things like beans, lentils, nuts, tofu, tempeh. I have an example of something that I never appreciated growing up. I'm not sure if you can see them.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah. What is that?
These are called round nuts. It's a type of legume back home. And very full of protein and fiber, very nutritious. Growing up, whether I was visiting grandmom in the rurals or even at home, we would have these cooked and mix them with nuts like peanuts. So we just boil them and they are so delicious. It's hard to
Terry, don't do that to me.
when you have a mixture of peanuts and this round nut as a snack. Oh my goodness. And one of the things my family here in the States, including my husband and my in-laws, say is I have good teeth. And growing up, we never ate a lot of candy or sweets because we always had these healthy snacks that I didn't appreciate growing up. It's just what we did, And outside the house, we had mango tree, avocado trees, or the neighbors had. We had peaches, guavas, all that stuff. So I digress, but just kind of once you take me on a food journey, my mind goes all over. But anyway, so going back to proteins, lentils, beans, soy products, nuts, all those can be good sources of protein. And if somebody is not like a vegan, they can do like things like eggs, fish as well. And those are healthy choices as well.
I remember watching one of your class. You had a cooking demonstration. Oh, I missed those. Those were good. And you were cooking up tofu. And I'm like, Terry, are you trying to make sure nobody signs up for class today? What do you mean you're doing tofu? And then I joined, and man, just watching you prepare tofu, I really was moved to go and get some tofu.
You know what, Dr. Viv, it comes from the space of before I say I want to eat something, I'll at least give it a try once. Tofu is not something I was exposed to growing up. It's only when I moved here that I started being exposed to tofu. And they say knowledge is power, and it is. And reading up on tofu, finding out how it's made, its nutrition benefits, the different ways you can make it, I was like, okay, I can do this. I can try it. And we even made it for a friend who swore he would never eat tofu. But there's a recipe for a soup with butternut squash,
Mm.
chicken broth or vegetable broth, tofu as the protein, and whatever else you like. So we tend to add ginger to it. So we made it, never told him that he said tofu, and he kept asking for more, asking for more. When we finally told, he was like, he didn't believe it. He didn't believe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That, like I said, I watched you prepare tofu live and I was like, yeah, I am really tempted to try tofu. So, and look, talking about the plate, so that's a quarter of the plate, right? So, as we talked about the non-starchy vegetable is the half the plate, your starch, a quarter, and then the protein now would be, whether it's animal protein or not, it's the remaining quarter of the plate, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So now let's talk a little bit about healthy fats. When you have saturated fat that adds up, increase weight, and not even good for our heart either. So talk, but there are also benefits of eating fat.
Okay. One that I would like to probably talk about is things like the skin, good for the skin. One of the foods that have healthy fats in them, avocado, right? Avocado, one of the fish plants I used to be like, growing up, I couldn't. And my brothers, I know they'll watch this, they would chase me. They would mash up avocados, and hold it with a spoon and chase me because I couldn't stand avocados. But now I have avocados in my house every week. I have to buy them from the store. So this is, it has healthy fats, which have vitamin E, which is a very good nutrient for our skin. So
Mm.
yeah. So
Miss Tari, hold it right there.
okay.
So I love avocados, but not every day. So now you say good for our skin. I am just going to be eating so much avocado. All my enemies will be wondering while my skin just be glowing. So thank you. So don't say too much so they figure out the secret to my good skin.
Yeah, but they do have fat, extra calories, so you don't want to be eating it every day because it does. Okay.
But anyway, jokes aside, you were talking about some really wonderful benefits of avocado. So go ahead.
Yeah. So we do need fats. It's also a source of energy for our bodies. But again, everything in balance, right? Excess fat is going to affect our heart health, and the type of fat also is going to be something that impacts our overall health. So we want to go more for the healthy fats. So when I speak of healthy fats, I'm talking more of things that are plant-based fats or oils. So things like olive oils, peanut oils, canola oils, versus, for example, animal-based fats or oils like butter, for example,
Mhm.
because they tend to be higher in saturated fat. With the healthy plant-based oils, they tend to have little to no saturated fat, because I'm thinking of other oils such as from oh, why is my mind freezing? I can see it in my head. I can see coconut oil. There we
Coconut
go.
oil, thank you.
Coconut
That is,
oil,
I know.
saturated fat.
I'm glad you bring up coconut oil because that's a lot of debate around, should we cook with coconut oil or should we only use it for our hair and skin?
Right, right. I believe everything in moderation, just being mindful of how much is in it. And I say, because again, you want people to enjoy food and to make conscious but educated decisions in what they decide to eat. Somebody grew up eating coconut oil, that's all they have a taste for. So, how can we make adjustments to fit their lifestyle and their preferences and their culture and things like that? But definitely, when it comes to the type of fat, you want to go more for the plant based oils versus the animal based fats like butter, for example.
Gotcha. I think someone said it best when they said, if God made it, eat it. If man made it, leave it alone. Or eat as little of it as possible. So,
Moderation, yeah.
in moderation, right? Awesome. So let's we're beginning to get to somewhere here, and I think this has been such wonderful information that you've shared today. So let's talk about fruits because that comes up a lot. And I know I grew up in Cameroon. Orange is orange season. There's mango season. There's pineapples.
Yes,
There's so
yes,
many different
yes,
fruits, just so many different things that I've. But it's kind of hard when you get here. They're like, oh, don't eat fruits. It's high in
yes,
sugar. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard for someone
yeah,
who grew up always
yeah,
enjoying a piece of fruit to now go, are you kidding me? That has
yeah,
to go. So
yeah.
talk about those different fruits and how they all fit in a healthy diet.
Okay. So fruits, definitely a healthy food group. Full of vitamins, fiber, minerals, phytochemicals, a very healthy food group. But like you said, because it has carbohydrates, when consuming fruits, they need to be counted as part of the meal plan because they are going to affect your blood sugars after you eat. And going back to what we had touched on before, you'd rather go with the fresh fruit versus the juice, for example. And then even a little bit further on that, when you, because a lot of times now, sometimes cost matters. Sometimes it's not, maybe I'm craving a mango, it's not in season. And the only thing I can get that fits my budget might be a canned or tinned type of mango. Then I have to look at the food label. Are they added sugars? Does it say packed in its own juices or added juices? I have to put that into the consideration. And fruits can be a good alternative for somebody that is managing type 2 diabetes and maybe is craving a sweet. They're like, I feel like I need to have a brownie or a cake. So
Yep.
going back to the dietary guidelines slogan, make every bite count. I'd rather recommend that somebody have a fruit instead of something like a cake, for example, because with the fruit, they're making each bite count because they're not only getting the carbs, they're also getting vitamins and minerals and so forth. But always remembering that those carbs are going to impact your blood sugar. So if it's part of a meal, so for example, if somebody decides to add fresh fruit to a salad or something like that, they have to account for that in their meal plan. Or if they're having a fruit in between meals as a snack, they have to account for that to remember that it's going to cause their blood sugar to rise. So typically, I would say, because at the end of the day, we're humans, we're people, we're just going to do what we want. But how can we make our decision a healthy decision? If you are craving that mango because you're just feeling nostalgic, remembering those days with friends running around,
Yeah.
then maybe cut that mango. Instead of having a full mango, eat half the mango. If you got a tinned or canned fruit, then remove the juices. Make sure you're buying those with no added sugars.
Sugar.
Um, pair that fruit with something else. So, for example, if I'm having apple, maybe apples dipped in peanut butter, or apples with cheese, or maybe if I'm having a mango, mango with a side of nuts, food combinations, pair it with something else, and that will help not spike you up too high. And another thing I've learned too is that tropical fruits tend to be higher in sugars than maybe like things like blueberries, raspberries, and things like that. So having that knowledge, then it's up to the individual. Okay, how can I make it work for me so that I still enjoy my life? I'm not feeling restricted and I'm choosing healthy stuff.
I have she loves mangoes, but she knows the impact on her blood sugar levels. So what she does is she takes half a mango and then she mix it with blueberries. So that way, she cuts back on the total amount of sugar. So she's enjoying her mango. And now she's also learning to like new fruit that she didn't really grow up with. So I think that's a wonderful idea of talking about mixing it or just a little bit of what you like so you don't really feel like you're depriving yourself of some of your favorite things.
Yeah. And talking about the one thing I was like, I wish I knew this before. Adding it to a salad,
Yes.
adding mango to a salad, and you end up not eating the full mango. You probably eat a little bit of chunks, but you still have that delicious taste of mangoes that maybe you were craving for. So definitely mixing things up so that one doesn't feel deprived. Oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. See how you can cut back.
Beautiful. And it adds color to your salad too.
Yeah, yeah, true. You have the rainbow, a pretty rainbow salad.
Yes. I like that. You talked about cake then, and it reminded me of this story. And this is going into the next part where we talk about when you eat also makes a difference to when you're consuming that carbs. Consuming it later in the evening, foods really, rich in a lot of carbohydrates later at night, it has an impact on your blood sugar levels as well because, and it stays high because you don't have time to work it off. And then you end up to packing a lot of calories. But I do remember this gentleman in one of our programs, and this is when CGMs just came out, a continuous glucose monitoring, and I was, he allowed me to see his readings, right? So that means that when he was having alerts, I was also getting the alerts. So I think it was such a wonderful idea until we figured out what we got ourselves into. And I remember this one evening, I think it was almost 1 a.m. It wasn't even evening, it was early morning. And my phone just went off. The alarms were going. I'm like, what is going on? And I checked that his sugar was over 250 and it just kept climbing, right? And I'm like, it's 1 a.m. What could be going wrong, So since it wasn't coming out, I called the wife. She had given me permission to say, call. Because he was, there's a lot of concerns. There's other things going on. But anyway, back to the story. So I called the wife. I'm like, is everything okay? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm fast asleep. Your phone call just woke me up. I'm like, well, I'm getting alerts that, your husband's sugar levels are rising and they're staying up for a little bit. And she's like, oh, I just realized he's not in bed. She goes down to the kitchen.
Oh my.
And here's the fridge. Enjoy leftover birthday cake. And she handed the phone. I could hear she on the speaker. She's like, Miss Vivian said you need to leave the cake alone and go back to bed.
Oh my goodness.
And he's like, how does she know I'm here? She's like, well, your alarm woke her up. And that's where he realized, oh my goodness, I'm giving this woman so much powers. And secondly, he was really shocked though that small piece of what he thought was a small piece of cake could have that kind of impact on his blood sugar levels.
Right.
But I thought that was an interesting story to share.
It's an eye opener sometimes. And
yes.
And it's a good check and balance, like a checks and balance to realize, because sometimes you don't realize, especially without a CGM, maybe you are checking here and there, but with the CGM, it's giving you data continuously and it's allowing others to see your data.
That's true. And especially if you're looking for accountability, there's no getting around it. You get to see it and you can make decisions. So let's talk about family, eating habits, where you grew up with, all those have an impact on what choices people make. So share a little bit with our audience the importance of family eating habits and how that can have an impact on someone trying to manage their diabetes.
What we grow up being exposed to becomes our habits or maybe part of who we are as an individual, the decisions that we make. So if I grow up in a household where people are willing to try different foods, people are willing to try different vegetables, cook differently, people are following a healthy dietary pattern, those habits are becoming a part of me so that when I grow up, I'm also going to pass them on to the next generation. So if it's the whole family eating together, then it actually also helps the person who's managing type 2 diabetes, for example, because I've had situations where somebody might say to me, what, I'm really trying hard. I'm trying to eat whole wheat bread, for example. Maybe they're starting off with small changes. I'm trying to eat whole wheat bread, but everybody says, we don't like that. We're not eating that. We prefer our white bread. Or somebody says, I'm trying to eat more veggies, but everybody says, no, we prefer to eat maybe pastas, lasagnas, or maybe a high starch or high carb diet. Now, do you have somebody then cooking just for themselves and not for the whole family? That's not practical, you see. So it makes it harder for the individuals trying to manage their diabetes if the whole family is not engaged or committed to healthy eating. Because unfortunately, sometimes people feel like healthy eating means foods that are not delicious, which is not the case at all. A healthy dietary pattern can be fun, can be delicious, and most of all, nutritious and help the individuals manage their sugars. So definitely eating well together as a family will also help the individuals managing blood sugars. It takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to help somebody manage their blood sugar in terms of maybe their immediate village, which is their family, their household. But also, it even translates to the general area of where they live. Are they living in a food desert? Are they living in places where it's hard to get vegetables in the store? Maybe they only have bodegas. Maybe they only have stores that are selling, foods that are lower on the nutrient scale than in other places. So definitely a healthy eating habits start from within the house, what somebody's exposed to. Because I've had situations where we're trying to do the plate method, and I say to somebody, tell me what vegetables you like, what non-starchy vegetables you like. I don't like vegetables. And I'm like, can you tell me more? I never grew up eating vegetables. I told my parents I didn't like them. They didn't force me. They didn't let me try. They just allowed me to do whatever. So I don't have a taste for them. So it's a complex issue, but suffice to say that it's important how we eat as a family, because it will affect somebody as they try to manage their blood sugars.
Thank you for saying it so well. And also, with the case of type 2 diabetes, it runs in the family too, right?
Right.
So having healthy eating patterns, like you said, it benefits everyone in the family. And
Yeah.
also have situations where, sometimes it's the wife who cooks. So if you're not the one responsible for the cooking, and someone else making decisions about what is everyone in the house eat, and they don't buy into the idea of cutting back on added sugar and increasing non-starchy vegetables, it takes a lot. It takes more than willpower in that case to make it work.
Yeah, you make a very good point there. And it takes me back. You're taking me back today. When I was growing up, we're a family of bookworms. We love reading, and my older sister, started forcing English classics on me when I was pretty young. But we could get lost in books. But one thing my mom always said, especially when as kids grow different schedules and so forth, my mom always said we have to eat dinner or supper. We call it supper as a family. No one was allowed to read. No one was allowed to watch TV. You have to eat as a family. And I never understood why. Why is she forcing us to eat as a family and be together, at least for that one meal? And then as I grew up, I realized that, that is also a place where kids start to learn healthy eating habits. And
Yes.
one thing that I also started to appreciate with the exposure that I've had to nutrition is the lack of knowledge for little ones about nutrition education. And my sister actually was also in the medical field as a doctor. She said, gave me an idea to start writing a book for kids about nutrition, a fun book. I mean, it's a project that is still ongoing, but it made me realize how little kids know about nutrition or the importance of the variety of foods that they're exposed to. So definitely working as a family and also making sure people know why, so that they can be
Yes.
motivated to act and still enjoy food.
I'm going to hold you to that too. I'm going to be asking you every couple of months, right? How's that book coming? But I think that's a
Please.
wonderful, wonderful idea.
Well,
And
it's
I
my
hope you do
sister's
write it.
idea.
Well, tell your sister we are grateful for her, and we'll do our part to make sure You finally finished the book. So thank you. So let's wrap things up and talk about like one or two practical things you want to leave people with today. So let's say someone just doesn't remember anything. I hope they do, but nothing else we shared today. What's one or two things that people can begin to do today? People living with diabetes that they can do today to improve their health when it comes to nutrition.
Enjoy your food. That's one thing. Enjoy your food by making deliberate, healthy choices in terms of what you choose to eat and drink, how much you eat or how much you drink, and also just making every bite count, right? Focus on those nutrient dense food, a variety of nutrient dense foods, and limit the foods that are higher in added sugars, added saturated fat, and sodium, and staying within calorie limits. So make it a way of life. It's not about a diet. I'm on a diabetes diet. No, it's part of a way of life. So enjoying it, making deliberate choices. And as you're trying to be on that journey of eating healthy, start small, right? Because if I'm to say, okay, this is the beginning of the year, I want to manage my blood sugars, and I'm going to do it by stopping sodas completely, that might not work compared to, okay, I'm trying to manage my blood sugars. And one of the problems I've realized is that I'm drinking a lot of regular sodas. I'm drinking 3 sodas a day, especially when I'm stressed out. So maybe one smart goal could be, I'm going to reduce my soda intake by 1 can per day for the whole week, and then reduce it further to 2 cans for the whole week. And small changes are more sustainable than big changes that are not achievable. So enjoy your eating, make deliberate healthy choices, and make healthy, smart goals that are achievable for you and your lifestyle and your family.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Terry. It's been such a fun hour. I've enjoyed our conversation. I mean, you always laugh. We be like, you make nutrition fun. I said, you just make me hungry. I just want to go now and go eat something.
Well, I do appreciate our conversation, Dr. Viva. I've always enjoyed our interactions together. So thank you for having me. Thank you for having me get to this platform to talk about nutrition.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate you. That's it for our show today. And for our listeners, I hope you enjoyed it. Share it with friends and family. We always love hearing from you. So feedback is highly appreciated. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on anything. And until next time, remember your health matters.